What's up YouTube? This is Brian Fung here with a fantastic hot video about pharmacy informatics. Can't wait to tell you more about ASHP Midyear. It's going to be popping and we're going to be there. Make sure to look for me. I'll be at the volunteer booth. Don't worry, I'm going to show you around.
We'll talk about some things like the Residency Showcase, networking, and receptions.
And we'll also talk about CVs and business cards and just general networking.
My name is Dennis Lim. I'm a medication management informaticist here.
My name is Diana Schreier. I'm a PGY2 pharmacy informatics resident.
My name is Katy Shaver. I'm a medication knowledge management pharmacist.
All right, so we're going to start off with some questions here. The first one is going to be about the big Residency Showcase. So, very open-ended, what tips or advice do you have to a third or fourth year student who's going to the showcase for the very first time?
You know, I think it's different between third and fourth years. Actually, I don't even know if they let you in at the same time as a third year. So you're going in probably at the tail end of the things. As a third year, you're going in there just to get a feel for programs and getting a feel for the showcase. Primarily, it's understanding how the showcase works and how to interact and, you know, try not to take up too much of, you know, time from other people who might be fourth years who are actually looking for residencies. But definitely get in, ask a few questions, get a feel for how that flow works. If you're a fourth year, totally different game. It's going to be you trying to figure out a program, whether you like to work with the preceptors that are there, so know who the preceptors are, maybe do a little bit of internet stalking to see what they look like so you can pick them out from a crowd. Because there's going to be a lot of people there and you're going to be efficient because there's a lot of programs to look at. There's a lot of programs to talk to, and those conversations may take a little bit of time. So have your questions ready, have your business cards ready, and take notes as you are talking to them about key facts that you found interesting or you want to remember. And my thing for mid-year or in general is really, anytime you pick up a business card, at the back of it, always write down kind of key conversations that you've had, just so that if you ever need to write a thank you card, or if you ever should write a thank you card, then you have something to kind of, you know, make that person jog their memory about you.
I would agree with a lot of what Dennis says. I think the biggest thing that I would recommend is to look at the website of the residencies that you're going to go talk to before you show up to midyear. Because a lot of people talking there have the experience to know what's on their website, so if you're asking questions that show that you haven't done a lot of investigation, it may come off a little bit negatively. Not that you need to have looked at every single residency out there, but I think it is helpful to have program-specific questions because what they want to do is communicate to you what their residency can do for you. And if you don't have the baseline knowledge of, in general, what it can do, then all of those questions won't be as helpful for you as they could be.
I agree with what both of them have said. As a third year, pretty much, I went as a third year in Anaheim, and my strategy that year was just to get in and get used to the environment and prep for my fourth year. I don't think I really talked to very many programs as a third year student, maybe just a few at the end, but as a fourth year, my primary goal was to kind of knock some programs off my list and not be remembered, essentially. So any impression at the showcase is usually a bad one because the programs are seeing so many candidates, talking to so many people, they're probably not going to remember you, and that is your goal. Another thing, you should always look at the website for the showcase before going in because there's a map for each of the showcase times, and it's helpful to kind of map out your route. It gets extremely crowded in the showcase, like shoulder to shoulder in some of the areas. So that's just something to be aware of.
Yep.
Okay.
So quickly, just about, you know, questions you might ask, because they mentioned two great points. You know, look at the website, answer the questions that the website will tell you about. But, you know, questions that you might want to ask readily is, you know, what does the day-to-day look like on your rotation after you've discovered potentially, you know, who or what rotation that preceptor is precepting. And then potentially you could talk about other research projects that might be available in the upcoming year. So these are good questions to get a feel for the program, as well as, you know, whether the fit would be right for you. And as Katy mentioned, quickly eliminate programs you have no interest in applying.
Yep. Another strategy would be to try and talk to the director first about requirements and just general program things, and then go talk to the residents and ask kind of the same questions. Then you can get a feel of, how well the program is run. Does the program actually execute what it's saying it's supposed to? You should also look at the body language and attitudes of the current residents. I mean, do they look like they want to die? I would probably knock that program off my list. That does happen. I've seen that a couple
There are
times.
programs.
Yep, and you can definitely tell if residents are really enthusiastic about their programs. Those I would keep on my list. So body language is just as important as the words coming out of someone's mouth.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to remember that the showcase is really for you to learn about programs. So the more questions you can ask and the more you can really dig into what a program is like, the more likely it is that you're going to end up in the residency that you want to end up in, rather than, one that I thought I wanted this, but I didn't ask enough questions to really find what I wanted.
Something I didn't hear, so kind of a follow-up question for you guys, be curious to get your thoughts, is a lot of people talk about different timing of when and when should you talk to certain programs, or when you should enter the showcase. There's a time that's published of when it opens, but sometimes people say maybe wait a few minutes. Do you agree with that? Do you not? And sometimes people talk about going to programs that maybe you don't care about first to kind of practice or get that the jitters out of your system. What do you guys think about that? Agree, disagree?
I agree with that. I think my strategy was to go to some of the smaller ones that I was unsure about first, like you said, to practice a little bit. But the big programs are going to be busy the whole time, so I would kind of sprinkle those around.
Yeah, and I think there is some benefit to going to the ones that you're interested in first, because then you're fresh, you're ready to talk, you're ready to look excited, whereas if you're worn down after 4 hours of doing this,
and sweaty,
you might not be looking your best by that point.
Yeah.
So do evaluate at what point are you going to be the best looking candidate that you can, or you're looking fresh, you're looking excited instead of looking tired and run down.
And you know what? That concept actually applies to the people who are at the showcase. So if you're at the tail end of the showcase and it's 5 minutes of closing down, they're not necessarily going to expand on their answers. They may not be in a great mood to talk to you after talking to potentially hundreds of people during that 4-hour period. And so my strategy, kind of like Katie, was that I picked out programs that I wanted to kind of visit just to get a feel for how that process worked. The important thing that I did was listen for good questions that other people are asking, because normally it's going to be a multiple to one for any big program. It's going to be like 5 people, 1 person answering questions, and just random questions being thrown at them. So pick up the ones that are good that you might want to ask, and definitely come up with your own ones that are more program specific, but definitely map out specifically how you want to do it. You definitely don't want your programs that you're most interested in towards the tail end of the showcase, just because both you and the program will be pretty exhausted at that point, and it won't be the best situation for either of you guys.
Yeah, and you might run out of time.
Yep.
So take that into account. And at some of mine, I got so tired of talking that I think I left a little early, and I was okay with the programs that I didn't hit. So I kind of arranged my schedule that way. So some of the ones I was less interested in were at the end, and I didn't go to them.
Another comment I'm curious to get your thoughts on is etiquette when you're at the programs. And it's commonly talked about, and I'd be curious to know what you guys think about in terms of when you're at a program, let's say a very popular program, there's 10 people actually all next to this one person explaining. How do you coordinate that? Things I've heard is you want to be confident so you're recognized, or you want to make sure you're seem like a nice person, genuine, where if someone's not speaking, you say, hey, what do you think, this candidate over there? What is your approach towards etiquette?
I think one of the biggest things that I've personally been impressed with by candidates when they're standing in that circle is someone who lets other people in the circle. Because I want to be the co-resident to that resident, is someone who's inclusive, who thinks about other people, even at a point where they're trying to show off their best self and be the one who gets noticed.
Yeah.
So I think that, being as courteous as you can be while you're at it is really going to speak numbers to who you are. And I would highly recommend to be as courteous as possible, because that is probably the only thing that I was able to notice when I was speaking about my residency program at midyear last year.
Yeah, that's a great point that I had never thought of, but yeah.
I think that's probably a great way to get remembered in a positive light, because normally the goal is to not be remembered. If you're remembered at the showcase, it's typically a bad thing. And so etiquette is incredibly important. At the end of the day, if you don't get to ask any questions, it's probably okay. Just make sure that, if you have any pressing questions in mind that are important for your consideration, you get those in. It might not be with the particular person you're just standing there with and listening to. It could be someone else that might have a little bit either fewer people or have no one around. And this will really go on for any big program. Obviously, smaller programs will have kind of a different situation. You might have a little more private time with them, ask more kind of questions that are more specific and maybe more in depth. But in general, for a big program, if you don't get your questions, don't worry about it. Just don't be remembered in a negative light. So if you're courteous, that might be, for example, one way for you to get remembered in a positive light. Just make sure you get your name out there and give your business card to them.
Something else with that, it is kind of intimidating to go up to a booth that's really crowded and get into one of those circles, but you kind of have to do that. So it was good for me to practice that on bigger programs that I wasn't interested in, just to kind of get in there and listen to other people's questions, and then I would go to one that I was interested in and just repeat, but with more confidence.
Yeah, and I'd say that most programs are trained to, if you see someone standing outside of the circle, invite them in.
Yeah.
But I think that's not always the case, so kind of practicing how you can get into that circle, and even maybe standing so that the person talking can actually see you is a pretty effective way to get in and to ask your questions.
So kind of along those lines, how do you get remembered in a negative light? If you're interrupting, don't interrupt, questions that other people are trying to ask. Don't try to interrupt the person who's, explaining something. That's really one way to get negative light shine upon you. The other things you could just be there for too long. There's a point at which the conversation has ended and you probably got all you needed to out of it. Realistically, because I've been on both sides of this, I've both seen it when other people that I'm with in that circle, you just keep asking questions and never let anyone else ask questions. Also for people who are just there way too long. So have a time frame in your mind for how long you'll stay at that booth, and once that time frame is up and you got all your questions answered, get out of there and don't linger. That's my advice, at least.
Yeah, I would agree.
I agree. Another way would be if you're a P1 or P2 and you go to showcase and are very persistent every year, you don't want to make yourself memorable by bugging a program that early. I've seen that before as well.
Yeah, there's a point where it's introducing yourself, and then when it almost seems aggressive, and
Yeah.
you want to balance that your face is known, that you're known in a positive light, but not to the point where you're known as the person that's aggressive towards the program and in interacting with people in that way. So there is a fine balance, I would say.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll kind of wrap up the video there. If you guys have more questions, definitely reach out to these guys out here. And actually, if you're going to be at ASHP Midyear this year, you'll actually find Dennis lurking around, along with Diana.
Yeah, and since Brian eventually cut off my topic, you can feel free to ask me more questions about what I was saying earlier before he cut me from the video.
Yes, feel free to ask me questions as well.
You can email me. I don't think I'll be at midyear, but you can email me.
All right, that's a wrap. Thanks, guys.
Whoosh!
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in and watching the video. If you like the content, definitely hit the ImproRx button over to your left to subscribe, and definitely check out more videos over here to your right. Now, as always, if you have questions, comments, and even better, suggestions for future videos, definitely let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, until next time, guys.